What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stucky.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Maria Marino, along with Jim Turvey. Jim, it's been a while. So good to see you. We're calling this our futures reset for this WNBA season because the Olympics are finally over. The season is about to pick back up. So we want to sort of take stock of some expectations. But first, quick reaction to an incredible Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics were absolutely amazing to watch. You know, all the sports were amazing. So many new sports, so many fun betting markets, but also just watching it. They truly are like absolutely one of one. I kind of always forget every 4 years, and I'm like, oh yeah, the Olympics. And I start watching, and I'm suddenly like emotional over random sports I've never heard about before. And I'm like, man, this is amazing. But the basketball in particular, I mean, France-US double finals. Both games were amazing. The women's game was what I mean, it was ugly, but it was one of the best ugly games I've seen in a long time. So, I mean, I'm excited to have the WNBA back for sure, but the Olympics were incredibly fun.
I think what the women's basketball tournament from the Olympics showed in particular was that maybe the world has caught up more than we think because, I mean, France was a couple feet away from going into OT, and they certainly made it a game with the U.S. I would say this too, the final four teams definitely showed out. So U.S., France, Australia, which ended up getting the bronze, Belgium for sure. I was also impressed with Germany and Nigeria. And there was just so much WNBA talent scattered throughout all of these countries. And we're going to get into how that may or may not affect some of the WNBA teams as they go to finish their season. So just an FYI, we are well past the midway point. I think a lot of people think this is sort of like a halfway. It's not. 40-game regular season. Most teams have 15 or 16 games left only. With the exception of Indiana, they have 14 games left. So just another little sign of just how front-loaded their schedule was. So we're going to talk about win totals a bit. We'll talk about title odds, MVP, Rookie of the Year, a couple of maybe Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese specials. We're going to try to be as efficient as possible and talk through some of these things, but hopefully you'll get some ideas. Also, one programming note, Jim and I are actually going to be back tomorrow, Thursday, because we have best bets for our initial games back from the regular season. We've had lines for those out for some time, so it'll be good to get back in the mix of sort of daily WNBA betting. But let's just kind of rapid fire go through each of the 12 teams and sort of where they stand, what their win totals are at, and some of the storylines. Ready for some rapid fire, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited. I spent so much time going through this. This was so fun. This was just diving back in, all the futuresy type stuff. You know, I always love that type of energy with betting. So yeah, I'm absolutely ready. Let's knock these out.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be good just to refresh everybody's memories, even if you're not betting a future, even just to get ready to get back into betting game by game. But let's start with the top team in the league currently, the Liberty. They are 21-4. They have 15 games left. Their over-under is at 31.5 as far as wins are concerned. The under is at plus money. And the way that I want to break this down is just kind of talk about how many Olympians are on each of these teams, because I really do think that could come into play, some potentially tired or, rested teams, and then also strength of schedule. So for the Liberty, 4 Olympians, We know Stewie and Sabrina, pretty easy to remember, but Leonie Fibish and Niara Sabli also had nice showings for Germany. There are some rumors going around that certain stars of the Olympics might actually play to close the WNBA season, whereas they weren't previously allowed to. So, for example, a couple of the stars from France, Marine Johannes and Gabby Williams. If you watched any of the Olympics, hopefully you saw those two play because they had some incredible highlights. But Johannes was previously on the Liberty. There is a rumor out that, or a report, I should say, that the Liberty could be in the mix for Gabby. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Any team that were to pick up any of these international players that didn't play previously in the season would have to make room in their salary cap. But just something to keep in mind. But the Liberty have the luxury of having the second easiest strength of schedule for the rest of the season.
Well, and the Liberty did a little bit of contract work a little ways back, and they actually have some money freeing up on Thursday. So definitely have those Twitter notifications set up. This was something our friend Miles Ehrlich pointed out, that Thursday could be a big day for if they're going to bring in any of these players. There's also, you mentioned Marine and Gabby from France. Emma Miesemann is technically potentially able. Now, in the past, she has said, she might be focusing more on Europe. These are some big names that could really, really swing things. And for the Liberty in particular, I mean, Gabby Williams is, if people remember back all the way back to the beginning of the season, part of why I loved Seattle so much is I thought that there might be a way that Gabby made her way back. And we'll talk about Seattle when we get to them. Mm-hmm. But my love of Gabby is she fits any team so perfectly. She isn't. We saw her as kind of like a lead point on the offense. She can do that as a sixth woman off the bench for one of these super teams. But she's also, an absolute Swiss Army knife on the defensive side of things. Really good on point of attack. Would fit so perfectly with what the Liberty need. I'm really curious to see, where she lands. If it is New York, I'm already New York curious. We always talk about New York curious, right? In these. We can't help ourselves in the future. Just keep going back to them a little bit. But they have, of all the stars, all these big teams, their stars are pretty active during the Olympic break. And they might start to, show it a little bit in their legs. The Liberty and Jonquel Jones have one of the two stars that really is going to be the most rested down the stretch run. I'd be looking at her player props, in part because I think her teammates are going to be leaning on her. But we also might get rest spots here and there. Stewie might get a day off as we come down the stretch. The Liberty only have 4 losses all season. They might have a number 1 seed, kind of in the bag, look to give Stewie, who is and Sabrina, who are over in France, maybe give them a day off, really lean on Jonquel Jones down the stretch here. So I'm even looking at Jonquel for sure, but the Gabby Williams factor is really, really interesting here. They're slightly less, if you look at the title odds, we'll get to them eventually, but they are not the favorite right now, the Liberty, even though they only have 4 losses all season. They are the 1 seed right now. Getting that home court cinched up through the entire playoffs would be massive. So you mentioned their win total at 31.5. I'm not really going to touch that either way. I would probably lean towards the over, but the over is a little bit juiced as well. I think it's a decently fair number. But I'm on anything Liberty and honestly anything Seattle when we get them to. I want to wait on the Gabby Williams news first and then potentially be very interested.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate their ability to get to 32 wins, which is where they got to last year. But to your point, that over is juiced. And so there's not a ton of value there. Like I said before, they do have the second quote unquote easiest strength of schedule. And the reason I put that in quotes is because, obviously anybody can beat anyone on any given night in this league. So basically what our strength of schedule model is showing that you found on tankathon.com is, they're looking at the winning percentage of the opponents. So it's not necessarily taking into account, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, like home, road, travel situations. So you got to take that into account as well. But certainly I like the outlook for the Liberty. Definitely think that they, as we've already expected, are a huge contender for the title. All right. Already gone too long on one team. Let's keep it moving here. And we'll, like I said, get to title odds and more specifics with that a bit later. But the number 2 team in the league, the Connecticut Sun, 18-6. They have 16 games remaining. Their win total is at 28.5. The over -104, the under -122. So kind of could go either way according to the books. Just one Olympian for them, Alyssa Thomas, who didn't play heavy minutes. She was definitely a solid contributor for Team USA, but not quite the workhorse that we saw with like Brianna Stewart or Asia Wilson. Big trade happened right before the break. They got Marina Mabrey. I think this is something that may take them to the next level. I want to hear your opinion on it, but Marina Mabrey can do everything. She can score at will. She's a great passer. She was playing a ton of minutes for the Chicago Sky, really filling up the box score. So I think this was really a move for them to hopefully, I think that their front office was thinking, hey, what can we do that could maybe take us from being the second or third best team and put us in the championship conversation. And they do have the third easiest strength of schedule remaining.
Yeah, Mabry seems like an absolutely perfect fit for this team. And as you noted, the only Olympian they sent over there was Alyssa Thomas. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but of the big teams in the W, and even actually ironically some of the lower tier teams as well, that's much less wear and tear than some of these other teams have. You mentioned the 4 with the Liberty, but I mean, the Aces had 6, the Storm had 3, the Lynx had 3, the Mercury had 3, the Sparks had 4, if we include the 3-on-3. So this Connecticut team's in pretty good shape. That you mentioned that they have an easy schedule down the stretch here. I'm a little bit skeptical of Connecticut when it comes to playoffs and beating really good teams. I still think that is their ceiling is still something I question a little bit. But for regular season, I think they are going to be in really good shape to come in down the stretch pretty well here. They aren't going to have that wear and tear of the Olympics. I think Mabrey is a really perfect fit here. They've long needed some of that outside shooting and a little bit more creation. Take a little bit off of Alyssa Thomas. She's such a good engine, but sometimes she gets, there's too much of the ball in her hands and she gets a little turnover happy. Mabrey's a pretty good creator in her own right. So I think getting the ball out of Alyssa Thomas's hands, letting her be off ball, just a Mabrey Thomas pick and roll with, AT and that kind of that ability to play 5-on-4 downhill a little bit is a really interesting option for them. So I'm definitely, there's a mark out there for the number 1 seed overall. They are two losses behind the Liberty right now. The biggest thing is that the Liberty do have the head-to-head locked up. So it's really like they're 3 games back. I think they're going to be pushing the Liberty, though. I think this will be close, but it's another reason why if you're leaning either way with the Liberty win total, I think you take the over, because I think both teams are going to be playing it out down the stretch, and I think home court will really matter to both teams. But I could see a world in which, maybe the Aces are lingering in the 4 seed and the Liberty say, hey, we actually don't mind slipping down to the 2 seed to try and get, to avoid the Aces a little bit further. And the Sun, who are right now, I think plus 800 to get that 1 seed. It's an interesting number, at least. I still think the Liberty are more likely to get it, but at plus 800, it's at least an interesting number based on how well rested they're going to be and the fact that their schedule is so easy.
Yeah, so I'm actually seeing plus 950 right now.
950
to be the 1 seed, but you make a really good point that head-to-head with New York, I think would scare me because they've already played 2 or 3 times and have not been able to beat New York this season, and they've struggled with that in the past couple seasons. But that is one of the areas where I wonder, okay, the addition of Marina Mabrey, just switching that up, having another, I put her now sort of in their big 3, if you will. Bree Jones is great, but I think of Dee Bonner, I think of Alyssa Thomas, and now I think Marina Mabrey is kind of going to be right up there with the weapons. And so does that addition push them to where, hey, they match up better with New York? Now, as far as the win total is concerned, it's weird because, okay, they would need to win 11 of the 16 games, if my math serves correct, and it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to lose, I guess, 5 games when they've only lost 6 so far in the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, honestly, with them, it always comes down to how top heavy their schedule is, and I don't think it is very top heavy. So I think if you are looking at win total here, this is another team I would look over, even though some of those bigger win totals can be scary a bit at times. But like I said, I think the regular season ceiling of this Sun team is very strong. They're going to be at a rest advantage over almost all the other top name teams, and they just always take care of those worst teams. They win those games like they always should. I don't see any issue with them, taking care of business against those smaller teams.
And so last season they were 27-13. As I mentioned, the win total is at 28.5. 28.5. So they would have theoretically won 2 more games. And remember, the Aces aren't the top dog like they were last season. So, yeah. I mean, I would lean the over there. All right, let's move it on to the Lynx. Third best team in the W. They're 17-8, 15 games left. Their win total is at 26.5. Again, not a huge amount of value one way or the other if you wanted to go over or under. I counted 3 Olympians on the Lynx. Napheesa Collier, of course, Alana Smith on Australia, and Bridget Carleton as well on Canada. How nice. The Lynx have the easiest strength of schedule remaining. And remember, they already sort of weathered the storm without Napheesa Collier, who was out for 5 games. They went 3-2 in those games. And also she had gotten hurt. If you want to go back, say 6 games without Napheesa, because she had gotten hurt against Connecticut. So if you want to say 3-3, so to go sort of 500 without her is kind of nice. And so here's the thing with Minnesota. Do we think they can stay top 3? Do we think they can surpass the Sun, or even I don't think they'll catch the Liberty at this point, but I mean, they did beat them in the Commissioner's Cup. So the ceiling of the Lynx is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, the Lynx have been one of our favorite teams all year. Before the season, there was maybe the favorite win total over that has already cashed. That's always nice to cash your win total over before the Olympic break. Of course, Commissioner's Cup, we both like them on that side. Bridget Carleton almost brought home our amazing MVP. So the Lynx have been very, very kind to us all season. That being said, I'm slightly looking to fade the Lynx here. I think that between having 3 of their absolute best and most important players over on the Olympics, but here's the other thing: their coach was over there for the Olympics. Cheryl Reeve. We talk about the players who were over there, but she, while some of these other coaches were kind of back home scheming, being able to scout, getting ahead of stuff, their coach was busy leading us to an Olympic gold medal. I don't see, because the schedule is so easy, I don't think I'm going to fade the win total under, but I think it is a team that I'm going to be looking at to fade them on spreads when they, like in these first couple games back. And if I had to pick a team of the big 5 to be the 5th seed right now, I do think I would lean towards the Lynx being that 5th seed. They're tied for losses with the Storm and the Aces. The Aces are going to have a lot of tired legs out there, but the Aces are also the Aces, and they've looked pretty incredible since they've gotten Chelsea back. So I do think the Lynx are, for me, the most likely team to slot into that 5th seed, but that's kind of how the books are treating it well by this win total as well, by the win total. So I'm not playing them anything in the futures market. I'm more just maybe looking to fade them on spreads. I think that point margin that they had built up before, I think it's going to shrink down. I think you're going to see them more as like a, +4, +4.5 type net rating team. Whereas in the first half of the season, they were like, up there at +7, +8, +9 as a net rating team. I don't see that quite, those blowouts maybe happening as much, with a few more tired legs, a coach that is back from the Olympics and everything. But from the future side, I think we just let it rest for now.
Yeah, good point about the head coach. And also, you mentioned what you called the big 5. And I'm glad you brought that up, because if you look at the standings, the biggest gap is between the number 5 and the number 6 seeds, which are Vegas and Phoenix, respectively. So something to keep in mind, because the Mercury are kind of on the cusp. But yeah, I'm with you a little bit hesitant, because I'm just feeling like a couple of these other teams, which we're about to get into, might end up surging, and that might end up knocking the Lynx back down a peg. So speaking of, the Seattle Storm are in 4th. So they have actually the same record as the Lynx at 17-8, also 15 games left. And their win total is at 26.5. Over under is the same. You're going to get the same odds there at about -113. 3 Olympians, Ezi Magbagor, who showed out in the bronze medal game with a 30-piece for Australia. Sammy Whitcomb, also on Australia. And then, of course, Jewel Lloyd on Team USA. 5th easiest strength of schedule, so kind of like right in the middle of the pack there. And then this is the other team, one of the other teams that Gabby Williams could, as you mentioned, return back to. She was most recently a member of the Storm. So I think if she wants to come back, and the push and pull with her is like, does she want to just sort of ride the high of her silver medal and rest the remainder of the season? Or does she want to say, hey, like, maybe I can sneak onto a team here in the 11th hour and make a run at a championship? There's the prior ties to Seattle. We already talked about New York, which I think definitely has a lot of allure just because they are a championship contender. And then supposedly Phoenix is the other team in the mix. But as you said in our season preview episode, having Gabby on Seattle would have taken them to another level.
Yeah, and you know, this is the team that since the preseason, they have been the kind of mid-tier team that I have been all over in terms of futures. That has not changed. They are still the team that I'm intrigued by. They are, by title odds, the 5th longest odds at plus 1,100, and I'm still pretty interested. I think that, you know, the top 2 teams are accurately priced as the Aces and Liberty, but I think the Storm should be 3rd favorite among this tier. I think they are, to me, better than the Sun when it comes to the playoffs. I like their ceiling more, and definitely than the Lynx. You know, the Storm have struggled a little bit with the big teams as well this season, which is my knock on the Sun. So you'd think if I'm being, you know, fair, I should bring it over to the Storm as well. I think I have a little more leeway for the Storm because they're in that first season coming together. And, you know, you mentioned 3 of their players were overseas for the Olympics, but Nneka Ogwumike was not. She's going to be nice and well rested. They can lean on her a little bit. Ezi Magbagor is also very, very, like, among the youngest people there. Jewel Lloyd also didn't play a ton for Team USA. So I think that it's a little misleading I think they're more like sent 2 combined players. They're like in terms of the wear and tear, it's definitely less than some of the other teams at the top. Even a Liberty with Sab and Stewie did more carrying of Team USA than probably Jewel and maybe the young legs of Ezi. So I'm still really interested by Seattle. I do think they are missing a piece, but the Gabby Williams thing, that's where it comes back to. Yeah. If they get Gabby, again, an absolutely perfect fit. Jordan Horston has been excellent this season. She's actually filled in that role better than I even imagined. If you look at some of the lineup data out there, the Storm have some of the absolute best lineups in the through the first, you know, whatever we're calling this, 2/3 of the season here, sure, this Olympic break. If they can get just a little bit more depth, if Horston can now be that bench player who's playing excellently off the bench and slotting in to give Gabby Williams a rest or Jewel Lloyd a rest or even Skylar Diggins-Smith a rest here and there, I think that only adds to how good this team looks. And they haven't gotten big signature wins yet, but for me, that's not enough to write them off. For the Sun, we've been seeing this for 4 years where they struggle to get those big quality wins against the best teams in the league. For the Storm, this is a team that's still coming together, still, you know, figuring each other out. Adding a piece like Gabby could really, really bring them to the next level.
I mean, I've been pretty impressed with the Storm thus far, and I think they're still ascending. And, you know, I love the point that you made about, like, the Olympians maybe not as taxed as on some other squads. And I actually think this is a case where it might benefit you to have an Olympian, because I think Ezi Magbagor is still, like, we just still haven't seen her full potential. Yeah. And like a performance like she had could actually end up catapulting her confidence and sort of taking her stardom to the next level. And we haven't even mentioned Skylar Diggins-Smith got to rest. And I think that's the big thing. And the reason we're focusing so much on these, who has Olympians, who doesn't, is just, I've been seeing a lot of like players just like vacationing, just relaxing, like, you know, just resting and like resetting. And that can be so huge for the final push of the season. All right. So next one is super fascinating to me. I've been fascinated by the Aces this entire season because you and I think both have felt all season long that the Aces are better than their record says they are, which, goes against the old Bill Parcells adage. But that being said, they also have 6 Olympians on their squad, and their best player, who is the MVP frontrunner of the league, Asia Wilson, was a workhorse. I mean, she was the go-to player, leading scorer for Team USA. I mean, getting double-doubles all over the place throughout the tournament. She was not an Olympian that, went there to sightsee and chill and smile on the bench like Tyrese Halliburton. She was like, she was the focus offensively and defensively. So then, Chelsea Gray, who obviously was coming off an injury, and she started most of the games. So she played a good amount. Kelsey Plum played a good amount. Jackie Young. And then, Megan Gustafson played for Spain, who didn't make it to the knockout rounds, I'm pretty sure. And then Tiffany Hayes also played for the 3-on-3 team, and she's an older player. So that's a little bit, I really think that's significant. And then of the big 5, they have the worst remaining strength of schedule, 3rd toughest strength of schedule overall. So, and again, this is by opponent win percentage. That's how that's calculated. But I did go and just peep their schedule. They only have 1 homestand. They have like 3 home games to start, and then it's a boatload of road games, and it's either road trips or like home road. So the travel schedule and the win percentage of the opponent, both of those are kind of working against them. And unfortunately, I do feel like we have to mention the lawsuit filed by Dearica Hamby, because I don't know that it's necessarily going to affect the players on the court, but I do think it could potentially affect just the overall vibe. And Becky Hammon specifically has been named in this lawsuit as sort of having inappropriate behavior. So it's basically a discrimination lawsuit. So I just felt like I needed to mention that because I do think that vibes matter, however you want to measure the vibe. And so there's a lot going on with this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, you said it there, that there is so much, and you said fascinated, and that's, I think, the word that I come back to as well. There are so many moving parts here. You did a great job laying it all out, and I kind of just give +1 to all that. I do think that the lawsuit part of it is, the part that is almost strangest to me, because if you remember last year after the title, Kelsey Plum had a very strange tweet that seemed to imply that they used that as like adversity for themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're somehow twisting that way. It's a little bit messed up, to be honest, if it is. Yeah. But who knows how to read this? Right. That's kind of how I feel in general about this team. Like, this is a team where everything is kind of screaming to fade them. They're looking to go for their 3rd title in 3 years. They had an insane amount of players over for the Olympics. Yeah. They are currently the 5th of these top 5. And, so if Minnesota has that soft schedule, everything could align where they really have a very, very tough road to three-peat, but they are still listed as the favorites, and I'm still kind of terrified not to make them the favorites. So this is a very, very interesting team. I think the last couple weeks or a couple months here are going to be very telling in terms of are they pushing to get a top seed, or do they not really care as much? Are they going to give some rest spots to their players who are over there? Especially Asia, who got such a heavy workload, but she's in her prime. But Chelsea, I mean, I was watching these Olympic games, and it felt like there were 3 aces on the floor at all times. And I was kind of like, how is this not going to burn them in the long run? They're going for a 3rd title in 3 years. This is kind of crazy. Right. But again, I just am really nervous. It burned us. It burned me 2 years ago when I didn't get on them. It burned the 2 of us last year when we kept talking ourselves into Liberty. So at some point, you can't put your hand back on the flame, even if it looks pretty.
I like that analogy. Yeah, I mean, the difference in their win total, again, if my math serves me correct, is sort of the difference between going 11-5 and 12-4. Like, I think they'd have to go 12-4 to go over a win total of 27.5. Now, we had already said, I hope you listened to our preseason episodes, because the time their win total is 32.5?
It has cashed the under. Yep.
Yeah. So you and Dano were all over that, cash the under. And by the way, you already mentioned the Lynx. We said way the hell over 14.5 in that cash. So I'm not necessarily eager to, once again, bet them either way, just because to me, as long as Asia Wilson is healthy, I don't know that she's even going to be that affected by the rest, just because she's been so dang impressive and she just doesn't care. And she just is in peak condition and she just goes out there and plays like an MVP every single night. And as long as that's happening, that's the team you don't want to see in the playoffs. But to be fair, based on the fifth place standing here, her being playing at an MVP level hasn't always translated to wins for them. Like her consistency is there every single night, but the win-loss,
I mean, it really showed how much they need Chelsea. The start of this season, they were pretty suspect without Chelsea Gray, and I think it's no coincidence they took off as soon as she's back. Now she will be back, but again, what if, the wear and tear on her, she's a little bit older. I agree with you that I don't think anything's going to really slow down Asia, which is in part why I'm scared to fade them in any sense. But without Chelsea, they looked notably worse. They did not look like the hands down top team in the league. And, she's coming back from injury and kind of went right off to the Olympics. That it's something that needs to be thought about when you're capping the future for this team. I'm with you. We already cashed our full season aces under. I don't need to go back to the well. I would lean towards the under, if
you
anything.
Don't need
here.
The double fade.
Exactly. We don't need the double fade. Let's collect our win. Make sure we're net positive here. Yeah. A lot of these win totals I actually think are priced pretty well. I don't know if people were keeping eyes on these during the Olympics and maybe some folks were hitting stuff, but I looked at all the win totals like, man, this is like pretty much in line with what I would imagine.
Yeah, and to be fair, even though they are fifth in the standings, which sounds low, they are only 4.5 games back of New York, if I'm not mistaken,
and in the loss
only
column,
a half game back of Minnesota and Seattle.
Exactly. In the loss column, they're tied. They only have those 8 losses, so they really could be a 3 seed pretty easily.
Yeah, for sure. All right, definitely want to get into Asia MVP in a bit, so hang tight for that. Now, the 6th team is the Mercury. I'll try to go faster with these ones since they're not as crazy, but 13-12, 15 games left. The win total is at 20.5. The over being the favored outcome there. 3 Olympians. We know about Diana Taurasi. I wonder about her because, we started to see her minutes dwindle in the Olympics, which I think was clearly the smarter move for Cheryl Reeve. At times you would see her with like a back brace on. I mean, she's into her 40s. So I do think that has to be taken into consideration. Kalia Copper, though, talk about emerging. And again, I think she's another one that she's on the younger side. And just the way that she performed, particularly in the gold medal game, I think could continue to just catapult her. Like, to me, she has MVP potential. She's not going to get it this year, but like she's up there. I mean, I just think she is one of the most impressive, dynamic athletes in the league. And then Brittany Griner is on the older side as well. Didn't play a ton, but still played enough, and you still were in a different, time zone for almost a month. Sadly for Phoenix, losing Beck Allen for the season. So she was supposed to play on Team Australia. And remember, she got hurt, so she didn't even get to play. So I'm pretty sure she's done.
Is she done for the season? I hadn't heard that. I figured that she was not going to be back when they started back up. I hadn't seen an update on full season. That would be huge.
I could be wrong, but I thought that her injury was pretty serious.
If I can, you want me to chat for Phoenix for a little bit, and you see, because that would change. I'll say this. I'm already leaning towards a little bit of an under here on Phoenix, in part because we talked about how there's this big 5 that is really separated from the rest. And then honestly, then there's Phoenix, and then there's a big gap to the rest of the league, in my opinion. If you look by win-loss or net rating, it's not quite as much there. But if you look by talent, there's definitely a sixth best team, and it's Phoenix. So I don't think they really need to put their foot on the gas to get to the postseason. For them, the difference between a 6 or a 7 might not matter. And to be honest, they might be able to kind of coast to that 6 seed. But I mean, there's a lot to, like you mentioned these players that were overseas. I think that they are, likely to give some rest to DT here and there. I think even BG might get rest here and there. But I will say one thing that's interesting. We kind of mentioned it in passing when we talked about Gabby Williams. I think both of us see Phoenix as like kind of a clear third favorite in the running for Gabby Williams. I will note though, another friend of the pod, Owen Pence, tweeted out, "Let's get that Kalia Copper and Gabby Williams reunion." And Kalia Copper herself liked that tweet. So if she has any pull, she might be laying down the red carpet for Gabby. And that's another team, where Gabby would be such a good fit. She could really cover for some of the defensive lacking ability of Diana Taurasi at this age. Putting her next to her.
I gotta say, like you said before, you could put her on any of those.
She really is so perfect.
And I love the fit because she's so versatile. On a quick search, I haven't been able to confirm out for the season, but I did see high grade hamstring strain. Okay. So
they aren't going to rush her back. And I'll say that is one of the things I was going to say about this team is I'm definitely looking to fade them right off the bat. Already played Chicago and Indiana spreads and money lines in the app. I hope you got both of those because both of those were perfect spots to fade Phoenix coming back. No Beck for sure at this point. Probably going to rest BG and DT in one of those two games. Kalia Copper is definitely going to have some motivation against Chicago. I think she could have a pretty good game there. But I think overall, the Mercury are well positioned to kind of coast across the finish line. They're not going to get into the top 5 seeds, so there's no reason for them to go crazy. It's funny that you said the win total is at 20.5. I saw earlier today 21.5. So clearly I'm not alone in thinking that Phoenix might kind of coast across the finish line here and be okay not pushing themselves and just see if, hey, we have this talented roster. Let's see if we can make a little noise in the playoffs, but we don't have to go crazy chasing a 5th seed, which we're never going to catch.
And 6th toughest strength of schedule, so smack dab in the middle. Moving on to the number 7 team at the moment, the Fever, 11-15. We mentioned only 14 games left. The win total at 17.5. 4 more wins for them. I can definitely see it. That's just at a quick, first glance. Oh, no.
Yeah, this is another one where, we got them on the preseason win total under.
Yes.
And then we got them on the midseason win total over. And that is one away from casting. So again, I'm not jumping at, but I would lean towards the over. But let's just collect our 2 easy wins
exactly.
that we have in the bag.
Sorry. I meant to say, gosh, I'm so bad at mental math. It's really scary, but they need 7 more wins.
That makes more sense. I was like 4 more wins. Maybe I will hit this one more time.
7 more wins. But to your point, I already, when they bombed to start the season, I already hit the over 13.5. So I'm feeling perfectly fine with that. But they did only have the one Olympian, Christy Wallace, who played for Australia. And here again, 4th easiest strength of schedule. If we do start seeing miss playoffs, I'm sure there's not a ton of value on them to make at this point, but I do expect them to make it, just because mainly we've said it, leading up to the Olympic break, just playing so much better. Caitlin Clark looks so much better. The players gelling with Caitlin Clark looks so much better. Melissa Smith and Aaliyah Boston and just pretty much they just look better across the board. And we've said from the beginning, they're trying to make the playoffs, and I don't see them taking their foot off the gas.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I actually don't have a ton to say about the team as a whole. I think this is the team that gets the most coverage, most eyeballs on it. We all kind of know the trajectory. They had that insane schedule to start, and then they've been pretty solid since. Caitlin really struggled to start, and she's been really good since. So I don't think there's a whole lot to say about the team, but I do think there's some interesting markets. Do we want to do the Caitlin markets here, or do we want to save that for the end?
You know what? Why don't we do that? Because then because we have one Angel note as well, and we're going to talk about the Sky next. So in terms of Caitlin Clark, we did a little special before the season. Some things that, Jim, I think you like that we'll probably end up hitting, but as it stands currently, one thing that you are intrigued by is for her to record 1+ made 3 in every regular season game, must play 28 plus. So, obviously it's a 40-game season. So even if she misses a few, as long as she has played 28, she's good to go. And yeah, that's at like -150 right now.
Yeah, this was one of those that was available before the season. She is alive. She has made a 3 in every single game. I think more importantly, what's interesting, we were chatting about this before the pod. She is leading the league in 3-point attempts right now. Maybe that's not shocking. She's Caitlin Clark, but also it is kind of shocking. That's impressive. She's only had one game where she took as few as 5. She had 2 games at 6, but she really is getting off threes at a crazy level. She had 4 games where she hit exactly 1 3. If we look at the schedule, she's got 2 left against Minnesota, who's the best 3-point defense in the league. 1 against the Sun, 1 against the Storm, and 1 against the Sky. Those are the 3 next best defenses. Where I get a little bit nervous, the 3-point attempts have basically stayed the same for her all season. She's just shooting them at a little better clip during this most recent run of play after that tough schedule start. So I'm intrigued by this at -150, but there's actually a couple other ones here that intrigue me, maybe even a little bit more. I always love a long shot. Do you have the 2 there that I had mentioned before the pod as kind of catching my eye at least?
One, I believe, was to lead the league in made 3s for the regular season, which I'm seeing it around +380. And right before we came on, Jim, we looked this up, and the leader right now in 3-pointers made is Kayla McBride at 76. Sabrina Ionescu right behind at 74. And then there it is, Caitlin Clark, Arike, and Kelsey Plum all tied for 71 apiece. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, considering you said she's leading in attempts per game, for her efficiency to improve. But I'm still a little hesitant just because we haven't seen the defense of her let up at any point in the season.
No, it definitely has not. And I don't think it will down the stretch as they start to, make the push for playoffs. However, I will say, if we don't want to overweight it, but if we're looking at like who went overseas for the Olympics, again, it's her and Arike who were back home getting that rest. Arike is going to have Satu Sabali back that's going to be getting a little bit more of the ball. Her usage might be down a little bit. Now her spacing might also open up more options for Arike. But at +390, I actually, when I saw that number, I was like, oh, it must be that Sabrina's, like a dozen or so ahead of her. The fact that it's K-Mac only 5 ahead of her. K-Mac has seen her shooting kind of, slowly come back to earth. She's still shooting at like a 43% clip that might even drop a little bit more. And then it's Sabrina 3 ahead of Caitlin. Sabrina's definitely, she definitely got a lot of minutes over there in Paris. I'm curious if the Liberty, if they lock up the 1 seed, if they maybe rest Sabrina for a game, this could be close enough that a game's worth of rest might really be able to swing it. And then there's even one at +800 that caught my eye as well. I can't remember the exact wording. Do you have it up? I can look it up as well.
Were you going to say... Oh, yeah. To record 20 plus assists in any regular season game. Now, I think even though going into the season, we thought that Caitlin's playmaking would translate right away, I don't think we ever would have imagined that she would break the single game assist record, which she did in her final game before the break. In a loss, albeit against Dallas, she had 19 assists. So, I mean, that's telling you she can get 20. Like, it's doable.
Yeah, it definitely is. So at +800, I'm going to be interested. I'll say this. I don't think it probably is the best value play. I actually think that to lead the league in threes is probably the best value play. But I will say this. It's just going to be a fun bet to root for. Who doesn't want to have a bet rooting for Caitlin to go for 20 assists? I think if you make the case against it, it's twofold. It's that outside of her 19 assist game, her next highest is 13 assists. And she's not going to play any defense as bad as the Dallas Wings defense was that day, because even the Dallas Wings, who are hands down the worst defense in the W, they'll have Satu Sabali back. So she's not going to face a defense that bad. But, I mean, her assists have been improving throughout the season. She has clearly gotten, on better wavelengths with those bigs, especially Aaliyah Boston, her really looking strong. Nalissa Smith, like you said, and her really looking strong. The trajectory is going the right way. Is it a 12% likelihood? I would probably make it a little bit longer number. But if you want to just do a really fun low sprinkle, how fun would it be to have that number if she were to break the assists in one game record and get to that? just such a nice clean number, 20 assists too. It'll be really cool to see. So I think of the three, I would most recommend to lead the league in threes. But they're all fun bets, and the one-way markets can be scary and they can definitely be sketchy. But those three I actually thought all were decent numbers that caught my eye and are at least fun bets and not terrible value.
And I'll say this, I think that Caitlin Clark might be the biggest beneficiary of any player in the league of this Olympic break. Because you and I have talked about it for months now, like just everything that she's been a part of over the last year plus, so much media attention, record chasing, just a super long run in the NCAA tournament. It just has been nonstop for her. So I was just like super happy when I saw her like on a boat with, I think it was Katie Lou and Lexi Hull, just like living her best life.
Catch your breath, Caitlin. Yeah, really. Take a deep breath.
So and you also know she's like a little psycho too. Like she's probably like getting all competitive in training and like working on her float game and like,
for sure.
Using the whole like motivation of being left off the Olympic team. Like, I do wonder, like, I'm sure she was locked in. I'm sure she was watching. But anyway, what I'm saying is like, as far as, getting to the next level, like, I don't know if there's anyone that could benefit more from the rest, except maybe Angel Reese. Let's get to the Chicago Sky really quick. Because look, I personally feel that Caitlin Clark has edged Angel at this point for Rookie of the Year, but I don't think it's as far away as the odds are making it seem. So right now, I'm seeing Caitlin at like minus 2,000, Angel Reese at plus 700. And part of what might be the issue for Angel, I think, because we've heard like competitiveness of teams sort of come into play. If you make the playoffs versus if you miss the playoffs, that might be the difference in a somewhat tight Rookie of the Year race. And the Sky did trade Marina Mabrey. They add Rachel Banham and Mariah Jefferson. Remains to be seen how effective they're going to be. They didn't have any Olympians, so that works in their favor. Kennedy Carter has been an absolute baller, but I just fear that defenses are just going to be able to really just focus on her. Even that you might not be able to stop her because she just seems pretty much unstoppable. But like Angel Reese for the longest time had, she had I don't even remember how many straight triple doubles she had. She broke the record.
Was it
like
14 or 15? Yeah, it was in the teens. Yeah.
Forgive me. It's been like a month. I forgot to write that one down. But look, triple double, machine. I believe currently leading the league in rebounds per game. And that's another one that you can bet on. You can bet on Angel Reese to lead the league in rebounds per game in the regular season at like minus 115. Real quick, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that one as well. These one-way markets, I don't often find myself all that intrigued by, but there were several that caught my eye, and this is one of them. We did talk about how Asia is superhuman, and the Olympics very well may not slow her down. But at some point, if the Aces are like, hey, we're not going to catch the 1 or 2 seed, we're going to be in this 3, 4, 5. Hey, is there any let's take those minutes of Asia's a little bit down. We're going to be trying to go for a 3rd straight title. Like we need to kind of give her a little bit, even if it's just buying her a few minutes off of her minutes per game this year. And Angel Reese, I mean, she nothing has slowed her down. If anything, Mabrey leaving town, one of their better shooters, might just often open up more offensive rebound looks, to be honest. If this offense isn't as good, I'll be curious to see what the impact on pace is. We're going to get Mariah Jefferson. I would tend to think that Mariah Jefferson would maybe make the pace of the Sky a little bit higher even than a Marina Mabrey. But I'd want to see that before, baking it into the cap. But you mentioned in the Rookie of the Year, this is where it gets so tricky. Brandon Anderson, one of our favorite here at Action Network, is so good at saying that, you can cap the awards the way that you would vote on it, or you can cap the award the way that you think it's going to be voted on. Because it's not who I think is the Rookie of the Year. Because I actually, you lean towards Caitlin. I actually lean towards towards Angel right now. I think if you look at the first 25, 26 games, the pre-Olympic start, we don't have a lot of great advanced stats in the WNBA, but the ones we have really, really, really like Angel. If you go by win shares, she had 2.7 to Caitlin's 1.2. Now, win shares are not perfect. I know that for sure, but
hold on, correct me if I'm wrong. That gap has definitely gotten closer. Right?
It has. It was, at one point it was like, I think Caitlin was negative for a while. So Caitlin has really taken off since the schedule got easier. But if I'm part of what I'm doing is, taking that into consideration, what they're doing against the best teams, I think Caitlin has played notably better against the not top tier opponents. To me, that's a little bit of a dig on, not a dig on her, but it's just saying, as a rookie, which is totally fair, against the top opponent, she is not having the impact that the Angel has shown that she has had. And I think the on-off numbers are really similar. So when Angel is on the court for Chicago, they are plus 3.4 net rating. When she's off, they are minus 21.5. That's an insane gap. It's plus 24.9 points per 100 possessions net rating. That is literally best in the entire WNBA. That is a crazy stat to lead the WNBA in as a rookie. For Caitlin, it's about the same whether she's on or off the court. And again, this stat isn't perfect. Lindsay Allen of the Chicago Sky is second, and how much noise is there to which one of them is doing that. But when the gaps are as big as they are, to me, I would make Reese my rookie of the year through the first 25, 26 games. Do I see the voters doing it? I do not. Caitlin was so good in that stretch, and I think she's going to come out. I think she's going to keep that going. I think she's only going to keep playing better. But at plus 700, if there's enough voters like me out there, maybe I'm intrigued. But there's a lot to pull apart here to get to actually making the bet more than just the lean right now.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say, and you have already admitted, every stat has, a caveat to it. So the win shares are closer than they were, still favoring Angel. As far as the on-off stuff, it's interesting because Caitlin doesn't come off the court that much. Tell me if you think that, plays somewhat of a role there. And then also I do think that overall, would you say at this point that the Fever, that Caitlin has better teammates, or am I just, I don't know, maybe it's more equal than I think, because both of these teams are where they are. They're both neck and neck in the standings.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And some of it goes to is your bench really bad? Is Chicago's bench just so bad that when Angel goes there, everything collapses? Yeah. This is what makes those stats really tough to, you don't want it to be the only thing you're weighing, right? But you are right. Caitlin has played more minutes, so that's noisy as well. The gap is so noticeable. And for me, more than saying that Caitlin has no impact, I don't think that's what it is. I think win shares and on-off are both really underrating Caitlin. But what I think is, what I'm more saying is that Angel is this legitimate. I think a lot of people see Angel as having one skill, and it's offensive rebounding, and half the time it's her own miss. I think these stats show very much so that is not the case. She's actually a very good defender. Her rebounding on both ends holds a ton of value. I hate doing the NBA thing, but the Grizzlies for a while, their offense really cratered whenever Steven Adams wasn't on the court because he was so good at getting them second chances. Angel Reese appears to have that exact impact on the Chicago Sky, where their offense really craters when she's not out there. So to me, it's more of not that Caitlin hasn't been great. It's that Angel has been that legitimately good. And the on-off stuff is absolutely amazing. Again, it's noisy. It's one stat. I wish we had all the analytics that we have for the NBA. We could really, really dive into it. But to me, I look at those numbers. I say, what my eyes tell me is that Caitlin has been a little bit better than Angel. That's what my eyes tell me. But then these stats over here tell me that Angel has been way better. If I'm going to weigh the eyes and the stats, I'm coming around to them being around even, maybe even skewing a little bit to Angel. But again, so theoretically, that would make the plus 700 really interesting. My fear is that it's not going to matter, and this is Caitlin's award. It always has been Caitlin's award, and Angel would have had to, put up basically MVP numbers to take it from her.
So I think the bottom line is essentially, we still think the pricing is not showing necessarily how competitive this race is. I will add that, Caitlin has since Angel won Rookie of the Month, I think it was June. Since that time, Caitlin has moved into, leading the league in assists. She did break the single game assist record with the 19. She did get the first triple-double for a rookie. So she's hitting these milestones that I think will kind of stick in the voters' minds. And then the only other thing I just thought of, Jim, we should have done a whole episode just on this. Darn it. But she has scored or assisted on 43%
is amazing
of the Fever's points this year. So I think that's crazy too, because she's just so key to the engine there. Okay, so in other words, in conclusion, maybe worth a sprinkle on Angel, but beyond that,
exactly,
that's pretty much it. But we started on this as, this might be decided on who makes the playoffs. Does Angel end up carrying her team without Mabry into the playoffs? That's going to be huge. Their win totals at 15.5. Generally, I'm staying away from anything Sky related because I was very optimistic about them. In fact, I bet them to make the playoffs early in the season. I got it at plus money. Now, without Mabry, I'm just not sure what to expect. I just don't know if they're going to have enough offense. Do we want to? I feel like it's been roughly 45 minutes since we've been talking. I'm like, I just feel like I'm going to just run through the last teams very quickly. But we got the Dream at number 9. I still think they're going to be, do you think they go tank mode at this point? Or do you think they're competitive? In my gut tells me they're going to be trying to make the playoffs. They had 2 Olympians, Ryan Howard, Letitia Ami here. Ryan had missed 10 games going in, but so they're getting their best player back. Their strength of schedule is sort of middle of the road, but they could easily catch up to the Skyer Fever.
Yeah, as always, my advice on betting the Atlanta Dream is don't. I hate betting this team so much, so many different ways. Jordan Canada, interested to see if she comes back and has an impact, but I want nothing to do with this team ever betting wise or watching wise, to be honest. Let's move on.
Okay, moving on. The Sparks at number 10. Even though I think they're more talented than their record shows and they have been competitive, I still think that they're not. Again, I just don't think they're trying to get in. I think Kurt Miller is playing the long game here. He's playing it smart. And they also had 4 Olympians, and they have the second toughest strength of schedule remaining. I'm going to keep it going here because the Mystics are a little bit more intriguing to me. They're currently 11th at 6-19, so tied for the worst record with the Wings, but they get all their best players back, and they were competitive before the break. They actually beat the Fever. They had a few interesting wins there. Very competitive against the spread. Do have the 4th toughest strength of schedule, but so Brittany Sykes, Shakira Austin, and Carly Samuelson are apparently all a go, and just based on how competitive I've seen them in these games, they might be trying to play spoiler down the stretch.
Oh man, I love Washington. If anyone out there has a book that has miss playoffs, I haven't been able to find it. Shoot me a DM. Washington, I'm guessing, would be a pretty tasty number to make the playoffs, and I think that there is a chance that they could make the playoffs. I'm going to be all over. Before the season, I said Washington Mystics money lines. I want those big numbers. Guess who's back? I just played a Mystics plus 390 money line in Minnesota against the Lynx. That first game back with the Lynx having all their Olympians, back. Then we get Washington returning their full squad. I think they've been, like you said, they've been really interesting and kind of plucky as this, not star-laden team. And now they get Brittany Sykes and Shakira Austin, by far their 2 best players, and Carly Samuelson, a really key player in terms of, helping that variance in terms of launching threes, helping their money line potential. I'm all over the Mystics here. Sprinkling money lines galore on Washington down the stretch run here.
They're like the hustlers of the WNBA. They're
so
like,
good.
They come in and you feel like it's going to be a win, and they're like, nope. Nah.
First halves, they've been incredible too. I'll be curious if that trend continues with their star players back, but their first half money line and spread have been awesome this season.
All right. And then finally the Wings. And again, normally I would just say freaking skip over them, but this is intriguing to me too, because they're getting Satu Sabali back, and she looked great in the Olympics. Maybe touch. I feel like last season she was a little bit better conditioned and just like a little bit in better shape, which makes sense. She's coming off a long injury hiatus, but Satu is good. And then, like you alluded to it, Arike sort of having that other star back. Maddie Siegrist should be back soon. They do have the toughest strength of schedule, so the hole might just be too deep to climb out of. But their win total is only 10.5, and they've won 6 games already. There's 15 games left. So I don't know. Interesting.
I know. I really wanted to be on the over here. Dano Mataya loves the over for their win total rest of the season. I know. The scariest part is they have to play the Liberty 4 more times and the Aces 2 more times. That alone is a tough schedule. But you said it. I mean, getting Satu and Maddie back, it helps tenfold. Like that's like going to get the ball out of Arike's hands. When Arike struggles, it's kind of forcing shots at times. Satu looked outstanding for Germany. Maddie was hugely important early in the season. I think they could even try to be pushing for this 8th spot. I don't think they benefit from missing the postseason. So for me, this is like, an interesting team. Get them on the money lines and stuff if the books aren't pricing it correctly. But I'm definitely interested. I want to see Satu with Dallas. I don't think we've gotten official word that she'll be back, even though she was playing in the Olympics. So I have to assume she will be. But Washington and Dallas are definitely going to be, I mean, you kind of skipped over the Sparks as you should. That's the team that I would not be taking money lines on.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about this.
No, you literally
Oh no, I did talk about them.
But you accurately gave them a minute on this very long pod.
Okay.
That's how much they deserve. Dallas and Washington, those are the teams at the bottom of the standings I want to be playing.
Yeah, 100%. Arike coming off the finals MVP, another bet that you called here on the pod. Okay, finally. Quick Thoughts MVP, Quick Thoughts Championship. MVP is another kind of somewhat of a similar case to what we were talking about with Rookie of the Year, just in terms of we have a massive, massive favorite in A'ja Wilson at minus 3,000. The next two, I find this hilarious. Caitlin Clark and Sabrina Ionescu.
Bro, don't put your money on Caitlin Clark to MVP. That's one thing we can stay consistent on all season. I think the basketball world might like riot or something if she were to like Twitter would shut down for the day.
Now, I famously tweeted right before the Olympic break that I thought that Sabrina Ionescu should be in the conversation for MVP. And if you think it sounds crazy, the reason why I think it's a conversation is simply because the Aces are in that 5th place spot in the standings. And historically, we haven't seen a lot of MVPs come from, not one of the top 1 or 2 teams. And in fact, I went back and looked it up. So of the 27 MVPs, 21 of them have had the best or second best records. So of the 6, you have a couple that have been 3rd best and so on and so forth. And then meanwhile, when I tweeted that, by the way, Sab had dropped 30 that night in a win over Connecticut without Breanna Stewart. She had scored 20 plus in 5 straight games. Meanwhile, A'ja Wilson had 28 and 14, yet again, so solid, so consistent, but it was a loss to the sky. So that's what I mean when I say like just not always necessarily translating to wins. But that being said, I just think that A'ja has built up such a lead in the conversation, the minds of the voters. Everybody's talking about it. Like even LaChina Robinson during the Olympics broadcast is like, she's the MVP. I think it'd be really interesting. This all could be moot because they could move up to like a top 3 seed for sure. So again, like I think if they move into say top 3, I think it's an absolute lock. But that being said, at plus 8,000, I mean, shit, I'm putting $5 on Sabrina. Like,
yeah, I think you're right that it does seem locked up, but I also think you're right that if they kind of, we talked about, do they kind of look at the big picture here and say, hey, we're gonna have to win some road games, we're gonna have to beat some tough teams anyways, we're fine with the 5th seed. That suddenly makes it a lot more interesting of a conversation. You mentioned the winning record. I also will note that by win shares in the last decade, you have to either be 1st or 2nd in win shares No player in the last decade has been not either first or second in win shares. So that win shares is not perfect stat, but it really does encapsulate well the players that are contributing the most to the best teams, which kind of, so that's where it does kind of serve as a good proxy. There's two players that are in the running for second. So right now, Asia is by far and away number one in terms of win share. She's already over seven win shares, running away with the title. I'm vamping here as I try to get my win shares to load. But there's two players that are in the second tier that didn't go to the Olympics, that are on top tier teams and are at 250 to 1. So I'll say it finally did load. So it's Asia at 7, it's Stewie at 5.1. Even in an off year, she's still second. But there's a couple names here at tied for third that did not go over to the Olympics that are on teams that I think could be in the top 3 seeds here. Jonquel Jones and Neko Gumake. All year I've thought that the MVP odds have not been treating them accurately. Is this going to be a CLV sandwich? Absolutely. But could they be second and third on the MVP ballot? I kind of think they could be. I don't hate the Sabrina. She's a little bit lower down by win shares. But those two players at 250 to 1, again, don't put more than, maybe here it's $1, not even $5. Yeah. You put your 5 on Sabrina and $1 each on NECA and JJ. But if they kind of rest Asia down the stretch, or if they, just kind of stumble and are fine being the 5th seed, it's almost certainly locked up. But if you want to get fun, if you want to get funky with a long shot, I think those are the options for you on the MVP front.
Yeah, and just a side note, since 2009, only one MVP has come from a team that wasn't the 1 or 2 seed or first or second best record, and that was 2015 Elena Delle Donne. She was 3rd best. Okay, and finally, we end the marathon with the championship odds. The Aces are the favorite, plus 155. New York Liberty just behind, plus 160. And then we get the value with the Lynx, the Sun, and then the Storm and Mercury are a bit of long shots. Who you got?
Oh, I can't believe we're doing this again. If I had to bet one today, I would do the Liberty again. I can't believe we're here, but they are set up perfectly to have home court throughout the entire thing. Their stars were a little bit less taxed by the Olympics. The Aces, again, are going for their 3rd title in 3 years. Asia Wilson is the best player on the planet. Absolutely. Am I going to regret it? Absolutely. That's why I'm not actually betting it. But of the 2 favorites, I would lean towards the Liberty right now. I don't think you have to bet it. I want to see about this Gabby Williams news. I'll say this. If Gabby Williams signs with the Liberty, I will be betting their title futures. That to me is the piece that would push them over the Aces enough that I would be comfortable saying they should be favored over the Aces, even with all my Aces and Liberty baggage that I have from the last several years. Exactly. And then if you're going long shot, I mentioned them briefly earlier, Seattle Storm at plus 1,100, or that mid-tier. That's definitely the team. And then again, if they get Gabby, I'm definitely going to be betting them again. Gabby Williams, you might not think of her as a swing piece, but she is absolutely a swing piece, and she fits the Liberty and the Storm so well that if she lands on either of those 2 teams, I'm going to be putting a little bit on their title futures.
She was the MVP on a team that almost beat the best team assembled in the world. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that says a little something. And then, look, our baggage stems from, unfortunately, Stewie had a super uncharacteristic postseason last year. Do we see that happening again? I want to say no. And also, I think we both wondered, too, did she tap into something with the Olympics of, hey, I'm going to stop being passive and I'm going to be Stewie.
Yeah, we were talking, we were texting a little bit during the Olympics, like, where was this aggression from Stewie on the Liberty? So that's another thing. Keep an eye out. If she comes back and she does look like she has some of that aggressive play, that's a great sign. If she doesn't, you and I were saying it smells weird. Something smells weird if not. So I love seeing Sab as kind of step into the leader light on the Liberty. Yeah. But you still need Stewie, your best player, to be that aggressive and really,
you're going to actually win.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, this has been a super extensive Futures Reset episode. So thanks so much for hanging with us here on Buckets, presented by BetMGM. He's Jim Turvey. I'm Maria Marino. Want to say an extra big thank you to our ever so patient producer, David Payne. And we're going to be back tomorrow with Best Bets, the first Best Bets episode of the remainder of the WNBA season. Let's get buckets.